Hello everyone, this is Hannah Kavanagh speaking, and welcome to our very first episode of CUNY Uncut, the first ever student podcast brought out from CUNY, where we talk about anything and everything, uncensored, unedited, and uncut. Today, I have one of the most badass women I have ever met in my entire life joining me here today. She's currently the first Black Haitian American female USS chairperson, as well as the executive vice president of the SGA. Super awesome person, and just such a strong advocate for CUNY. Overall amazing. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Juvanie Piquant. How you doing, Juvanie?
Hi everyone, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on here. CUNY Uncut
yes.
and Raw. This is exciting. It has sure been an uncut year.
I know.
So there's a lot to unpack.
No, for sure. Well, thank you for joining me. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about mental health, which is something that has been really prevalent over the past couple of years, specifically with like college students in general, as we switched to remote. We were doing that for a while, and now we're transitioning into hybrid model, unprecedented, murky territory. So I guess the first question that I wanted to ask you is what is your relationship to mental health currently, and how has it evolved over time for you?
I think at first I really didn't have a relationship with mental health, but it's something that it's there because it affects you.
Right.
And I think when people realize the aha moment of understanding this is something that I need to pay attention to, this is something that I need to attend to and nurture and figure out what's going on and what works best for me, is in moments of, catastrophe, moments of unprecedented times, like the pandemic. And I think for me, I've always been a person that's been on the go, and suddenly your world stops still, and you have absolutely nothing you could do about it. I mean, we're on lockdown. I can't go on campus. Even going outside to a point, it was just unless you're gonna get food or gas, that's it. Being home. So you're dealing with a bunch of emotions that you've never dealt with before.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a bunch of things that you never dealt with before. Learning, being at home all the time, especially me as a student who's involved. I get my energy from connecting with the students, from being on the ground, from walking to campus, from waiting in long lines at the elevator, the delayed trains. This is something that I craved. And that was my moment of realizing, now this is someone that's there, mental health is there. I like to act like it's not there, but it's in your face and it will affect you. So then that's when I realized it's here. And I'm gonna have to deal with this sooner or later, so.
No, for sure. And it's interesting because I feel like a huge part of college culture, rather like American culture as a whole, is always being busy, always having something to do, always being on the grind. And for me, I didn't realize until COVID that was the primary way that I dealt with my emotions. If I was depressed about something or going through a difficult time, I never really faced those emotions head on. I always would find other things to do to keep my mind occupied. But you're right, once COVID hits, you're in quarantine at home, and you're forced to face those emotions head on and do shadow work that you've never done before. It's super daunting, and but I was wondering, because I know you've been doing a lot of work in regards to demanding the increased accessibility of mental health services for CUNY students as of late. For those that may not know, what actions have you taken personally to address the lack of accessibility in regards to mental health resources at CUNY?
I think me being a student leader for 3 years, I was vice chair of legislative affairs last year for University Student Senate, and now I'm USS chair, CUNY trustee. It's been a lot of work. I think when I was a freshman, I remember I would go to public hearings and board meetings, tell the board that we need to make sure we have more mental health services. But I think for all of us as CUNY students, as time evolved, you really realize, what is it that we exactly wanted? What did mental health mean to us? And what did we want to see on our campuses? And how did we bring that to fruition? And when I got into USS and just started organizing with students and elected officials, I've actually personally worked on legislation in the New York State legislature to address the mental health ratios. from the national standards to CUNY standards. And working with State Senator Andrew Gennardis, that's some of the work that we did, which was remarkable. Knowing that I could just not only activate this, but we can put this into action, was something that's very important for me. And it created buzz. People started realizing this is something that matters. This is something that we need to pay attention to. Education and just college in general, and to be at a university such as an urban city as this, it is not just enough for us to just ensure that we have the best professors and students are safe on campus and things are flowing, but we need to make sure internally we feel alive and we feel okay to go out and embark these journeys, because life will always have these challenges. And I think what mental health does is teaches us how do we maneuver within those challenges, because in fact you can't run away. Mental health crisis means that you cannot run away from your mental health. You cannot. It's not a button that you turn off. But how do we instill the best practices at a very young age in a culture in college, something that is so competitive? How do you make sure you are taking care of yourself? How do you know the important things to do? How do you know your triggers? And these are things we never really learn. We never pay attention because we're so young. We're trying to make sure we make ends meet. We have all these responsibilities, and we forget about our biggest responsibility, which is ourselves. So,
absolutely. No, for sure. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. So, I mean, and it's funny because I know that intersectionality has been like a hot button word over the past year, especially in regards to like the increased popularity of BLM. But one thing that I realized over this past year is that a lot of that does factor into mental health. And I know that there's counseling available at all CUNY campuses in regards to like, free counseling services, which can be super helpful. But I've tried both, I've tried like Hunter counseling services and even like Macaulay ones as well, because they also offer that. And for me, one thing that really stood out in my mind was that a lot of the counselors were, were white people. And that adds another shade to it as well. Like, and there's another aspect to take into account, like, being represented in regards to like mental health resources and seeing yourself represented through your therapists is like so important. But I was wondering, like, if you had similar experiences with the mental health services at CUNY, like what was your experience like with that?
This year was a lot. There was a lot to unpack. Being in USS chair, you of course were in the plenary.
Yeah. There was
a lot of racism that I experienced, a lot of misogyny. It was a lot. It was everything you can think of happening.
It was shocking.
At a very young age to me. This is me thinking I want to just come out and advocate for CUNY students, and you suddenly are the most watched student. You suddenly are someone that is held to standards that are impossible out of this universe, out of this galaxy. And for me, I remember I would always have meetings and always just try to power through things and go through things. And even people around me, fully didn't really understand to the capacity that I was experiencing these issues. And there's one thing to be a student leader at CUNY. There's one thing to have responsibilities. There's one thing to be in a leadership role, knowing that it comes with challenges. Yeah. And there's another layer of being a woman. There's another layer of being a Black woman.
Exactly.
And that is a factor that we cannot operate as if it's a one-size-fits-all when we're talking about mental health. You have a movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. I like to say, I don't think this movement started when George Floyd died. This thing has been going on.
No, for sure.
It has, the water was kettling on the stove. And it burst. And you are at a moment now where we are so enclosed. There's so much anger, there's so much upsetness, and then you have all of this stuff that you want to do, and you're trying to figure out how do you create the best change and how do you challenge that energy in. And I think the approach that I took at USS this year was not just an approach of we're going to advocate for CUNY students and CUNY funding. I wanted students in the plenary to see the humanity that is around all of us.
For sure.
And that comes with its great risk. that comes with, putting your foot down and taking stands and maneuvering in ways that are sometimes not the norms, especially being a young Black woman. And that for me was the point where I realized that this is what happens. This is what it means to be a catalyst of change. And how do you maneuver in these spaces where you do not feel celebrated? You do not feel like you belong. But how do you make this space your own? And I remember when things got extremely rough, I was too scared to go to a council on my campus because I was USS chair. I was on the board, and folks knew me, so I never felt comfortable talking to anyone on my immediate campus. But what I did use a CUNY crisis hotline, because I'm like, you're not going to really know who I am, and I can be very vague. It's not like it's a face-to-face Zoom meeting. It's not like I'm emailing with my email or anything like that. So I felt like my identity was protected in a way. People didn't really know me, but they knew they were talking to someone who needed help. And I felt like I was able to share. I was able to be vulnerable. Obviously not into much detail, but when you're at such a leadership part, you feel like you are not obligated to share your emotions, especially being a woman. Going on Zooms, making sure that you don't need to show people that you're going through things. And that's what I did. And it got to a point where I was just like, well, this is a lot. What am I going to do? Am I going to figure out ways to power through this and continue the change that I wanted here to do? Or am I just going to walk away? And I say walking away because walking away does not mean you're weak. Walking away does not mean you have given up on yourself and what you came here to do. Walking away sometimes realizes what is it that you want.
Exactly.
And there's power in that. I mean, we've seen that with Simone Biles in the Olympics, someone who's gone through sexual assault. We've seen that with Naomi Osaka. The Black Lives Matter movement has been a travesty for her. You are seeing this at a global level of what mental health is. Mental health has always been here. But now we've had people to raise this conversation on a level where there's comfort and there's norms for us to talk about it, and where it's forcing institutions like CUNY to focus on it, to making sure we're actively looking at what we need to do. And I think for me, I knew that it's either you're going to change something inside you, you need to get right within, or you can't win. And I didn't want to give up on the students, because I knew that when I walk into meetings, when I walk into rooms, it's not just only me, it's the students that come with me. And I started to say, I need to get right within. I need to figure out how I'm going to maneuver, because this is not going to be my first rodeo. This is not going to be my last rodeo. And how am I going to get through this and figure out ways that I was going to do it?
No, for sure. And like, considering everything that was going on at the time in regards to USS, like, you handled the whole situation with like such grace and such poise. And I remember my favorite part of like plenary meetings were always like towards the end, you would always like instill a message of hope. And it was always like so nice to hear that from you, especially with everything that was going on, not just in USS, but outside of it, like internationally. There's just so many different things happening. And as young people, it's a lot to process. It's like, oh my God, like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think, for me, I have this concept of when you feel like you've lost everything, when you feel like you don't have anything else to give, the only thing you really have is faith and hope. The only reason why people who go through the toughest times, you see them still going, is because it's that hope that's instilled in them. It's that faith. And sometimes I did feel like I have lost everything. I still feel like that sometimes up to this day. I still replay in my head how this year went, and so many times where we could have done so much more things, even though we were victorious. But the only thing that has gotten me to the end was my faith and hope. Because I felt like at that moment I have lost everything. But the only thing I had was faith and hope, and I leaned in. And I leaned in because I knew this is the work that I believed in. I leaned in knowing that we were going to see brighter days. How is that going to come? I don't know. But I had to trust my hope and my faith, and ensuring that we get through that. And after every time we'd have a tough plenary and I felt like the world was colliding before my eyes. My legs would always be shaking under the Zoom meeting.
Wow. I would have never known otherwise. Like,
it was a lot.
Wow.
And there would be times before every plenary I would have to meditate. I'd have to listen to music. I would have to make sure I got up, take a shower, really go outside, take a walk, you know, and really lean into that hope and get in there. Because I remember I would always have plenties on Sundays. And Saturdays, I would just always have knots in my stomachs. I would always I couldn't eat. It was just like those weekends were the worst for me. But what I did learn is, you know, believing in yourself is such an important factor.
Yeah.
Even in the darkest moments. And no matter how much times we talk to counselors, no matter how many times we, you know, speak to therapists, that inner work, when you see someone get to the other side, is because it was something in them that was also working.
One thing I noticed as well, though, is that, like, because I think throughout the course of this year, I think I've garnered a lot more hope and faith within myself and, like, self-esteem, which I think is a big part of mental health as well. But it's funny because I noticed, like, once you're on the other side, it's not like it's over. You still have to put in that inner work to maintain mental health as well. It's funny when we were talking about mental health in regards to like BLM and like intersectionality and that sort of thing. I thought about the Audre Lorde quote that, you know, caring for yourself is not just an act of self-empowerment. It's an act of like self-preservation, an act of political warfare, right? And I was wondering, like, as a Black woman, like in a strong leadership position on a CUNY-wide scale, like, does that quote resonate with you? And if so, like, in what way?
I think self-preservation is the most important thing. As a Black woman, to be at such a space, that is the only way that I have been able to sustain myself.
Right.
And get through and walk into the meetings and speak up when I needed to speak up, and knowing when to take a step back when I needed to take a step back, and knowing which decisions to make. That was all because of self-preservation. That was always knowing that I trusted myself enough to know the decisions that I made and being comfortable with what I did. That is the most important thing, because life is all about people pulling you in so many directions and so many things that you should do. You know, people are saying so many things about you. That this year I experienced that a lot. The positive things, negative things, so many things. People think they have figured you out. But the most important thing is figuring yourself out. And ensuring that you are comfortable with what you do. Because in moments when it gets tough, I think that was the only way I was able to sustain myself, because I was comfortable with what I was choosing to do. And I was comfortable in leaning in and making sure I left remarks of hope. Because I wanted students to know, even though you see everything crashing before your eyes, you do have someone who sees hope. And we're going to move forward in that hope and direction. And I think that is the only thing that, you know, kept the plenary together.
Absolutely, for sure.
And that is the only thing that gave students the hope and wanting them to come back and continue to serve. Because they saw someone, even though losing it all, everything collapsing and colliding, you can still move with grace. You can still move with love. And it made me lean in more into love. Because when people act in negative ways, it's not about yourself per se, it's more about them. Hurt people.
Yeah.
People who are going through things sometimes may not know how to maneuver that. And I understood at an early age, in an early point, that you need to lean in with love.
Exactly.
Maybe that only dose of positivity you give that person is the only one they're going to receive. And that's why I wanted to make sure every student in the plenary, no matter what was going on in their personal lives, they came here, may have been conflict, but after every meeting, we're going to restore and rebuild that hope that you had when you walked in. And that is something that helped me, because I felt like I didn't have that. I felt like I lost that. But how do we lean in and continue to inspire others? And self-preservation is so incredibly important. Being selfish for yourself is very important. Knowing when to set the boundaries is extremely important. I think especially as Black women, we sometimes know that we have so much to achieve. We know we're marginalized in this society, and we're burning out. We have so many things we have to do. You feel like you have to take on every opportunity, because if you don't, you'll feel like a failure. But leaning into yourself and knowing that doing the best you can is the best you can. And that is something very important, and you know, getting to terms with that is something that was very important for me.
No, for sure. All like so beautifully said. And it's funny, like one thing that stuck out to me specifically is when you were describing like your self-care routine, the day before plenary, like meditating, pampering yourself, like that sort of thing. And I'm wondering like how that's shifted like since taking a little bit of a step back from USS. Like what's your like mental health self-care routine like now? What do you do?
It's a lot. I've been able to watch my favorite shows on Netflix, shows that you know, I haven't been able to watch.
What shows?
Well, there's a show on Showtime called Flatbush Misdemeanors. It was pretty cool. I like that show.
Nice.
Grand Army, Shoot It in Brooklyn. Really great show. Grey's Anatomy, House of Cards. Because House of Cards helped me a lot, knowing how to, you know, maneuver in political spaces. Every time I go to plenary, I would watch House of Cards.
That's so funny.
You know, that's important. I would read The Power Broker a lot.
Oh.
That's something that's very important.
The Robert Caro book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Power Broker. This is indeed the Power Broker.
Yeah.
So being in USS, that's what it was all about. Yeah. So really understanding the arts and sciences of leadership and what that is was very important, ensuring that I could be the best version of myself. Because, you know, I have a growth mindset. It's all about growing. I would do a lot of face masks. I discovered matcha lattes, so I'd make my own matcha lattes.
Oh yeah, those slap so hard. Those are so good.
The lattes, the coffee, those are my things. And just going out with my friends. I love going out to eat. So I've been, you know, exploring new spaces. Waking up sometimes and doing nothing. Is important. Because there are going to be days where I'm going to have everything and more to do. So that was important for me. And making sure I restored who Juvanie was. I think I lost a little bit about who I was throughout those moments, especially in the spring semester. I felt like I didn't even know who I was. But now working on who am I outside of CUNY and student leadership, because I am more than that.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
So figuring that out and just doing that inner work and focusing on things that are, you know, going through. But I mean, it's still a lot of things going on in the world. There's been an earthquake in Haiti that recently happened. So a lot of things in my personal life, you know, suddenly losing people, and, you know, just a lot of changes personally. And it's a drastic shift going into senior year, trying to make sure things are, you know, good to go. But I've been just making sure, especially the last couple of days of, I like to say, freedom per se before the semester starts. I've been really trying to lean into me and doing things that excite me and making sure that I am the happiest I can get to before the semester starts. And, you know, happiness comes from within. I'm doing that inner work. That's what I've been doing.
Awesome. No, I love to hear that. It's funny because I had a similar trajectory in regards to like losing part of myself. But for me, that happened like last year, like shortly before COVID. It was just a lot of like personal stuff in regards to like friendships and that sort of thing, like people not turning out how you thought they would turn out, like being misled in that kind of way. And then when COVID happened, you know, we had all the time in the world to like to look inward and like focus on ourselves. And for me, self-care, funny enough, really manifested in getting silk robes for loungewear. Just like lounging around the house with silk robes on because we were at home all the time. And it's like, screw it. Like maybe the loungewear should be just as fancy as like the clothes we normally wear on a daily. You know what I mean?
I think the pandemic has definitely, you know, changed how we, you know, maneuver in life, what we see.
No, for sure.
I think there's a lot of things that have changed about me, but there's things that's most like, you know, still remain the same. I still have that same fire and hope under my feet to go out there and change the world in ways that we can, and knowing that it starts with me. And changing the world starts with taking care of yourself, you know, mental health, self-preservation, making sure you are nurturing yourself, because you will never be able to nurture those you would want to serve in the future the best you can if you don't do that for yourself. So I think that's so important for me. I think we want to create change. We want to do all these things, you know. We want to go out there and change the world. But change starts with us. And once we change ourselves, that's when the world begins to change. And
it's funny because I feel like it kind of goes back to the whole grind culture, right? It's
Yeah.
like even when you're working, you're like, oh, I could always be doing more. Like, what could I be doing more? There's always like a lack, right?
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, when did you have that eureka moment of like, oh, it, you know, changing the world really does start from within, from like establishing healthy habits?
When I would be in meetings sometimes, or I would be fidgeting, or I was not. Sometimes I would be present, but I wasn't there.
Right.
And I realized this is not the leader, you know, that I want to be. This is not who I am. And I want to make sure I'm there 100%. I'm in tune. And stop trying to do a million things at once. You do one thing at one time.
Yeah.
So, you know, understanding the beauty in ease and tranquility, and making sure you go at your pace. Because I truly believe what's for you is for you. And making sure you do that inner work. And even though sometimes in life you may feel like you've lost it all and you don't have everything figured out, you know, you're leaning into that hope.
Yeah. I think the thing that's reassuring as well is that like no one has anything figured out.
Yeah.
You know, because when we're younger, right, we always think, oh, adults always have everything together.
And it
like, why
seems
can't we
like
be
it.
like that? And now that we're adults, it's like, oh, like everyone's really just winging it out here.
Yeah.
Be like that.
And I think that, you know, the whole concept of faking until you make it, that's very important.
Yeah.
You know, folks do it. Everyone's faking it until they're
Yeah,
making it.
but I feel like it's so reassuring to find that out, because you're like, okay, great, like I'm
And I
just
think-
like everybody else.
Yeah, and I think, as we said before, these conversations have been put on a stage. The people that we see, like people like Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka. You know, I was at a USS plenary when we lost Kobe Bryant.
Oh, that was a
Kobe
big loss.
Bryant, I mean, is I don't watch sport. I recently got into the NBA, you know, and you know, watching the Mavericks and Los Angeles Clippers and all that stuff in the playoffs. So I
fun.
recently got into NBA. You know, I have that app on my phone and check the stats and everything like that. But
Cool.
you know, Luka Doncic, Kyrie, Paul George, all those folks, LeBron James. But you know, we lost Kobe in a plenary. I remember. We were sitting down, and you know, a former USS chair, Timothy Hunter, he was a basketball fan, and I remember we were going through resolution, but it was like a huge debate on the floor, and I was like, you know, Kobe just died, right? And everyone's just finding out Kobe just died, and then, mind you, this is like everyone's childhood hero.
Yeah.
But then the next minute we go back to sit down and continue this debate. And I'm looking around, and you see people fighting tears.
Wow.
But we have to get back to business, right? We're at a plenary, we have to get things done. And that's when it showed me like, wow, it just instantly you're just shifting and moving. I remember when I lost my grandfather, you know, I had a board meeting.
Oh, wow.
Very soon after that, not too long. And then I had COVID. All of those things happen at an instant. And
that's a lot at once.
The sudden
I'm so
changes, you know, that just rock your world and just change, happen at an instant. And you don't really have time to feel. You never have time to think, especially for me. It's been go, 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 go. And I think it's this moment now I'm starting to feel everything that has happened to me and knowing how to move through them and thinking about how I really feel and, you know, what do I want to do to move forward. And sometimes, you know, crying. This is the most I've ever cried in my entire life this year.
Wow.
You know, and just the getting yourself out of, you know, that thoughts of suicide, all of those things.
It's so hard.
It's hard, and dealing with the thick of that in the spring semester was a lot. And you have to show up every day and showing this face. But I knew that, you know, especially when the thoughts of suicide, when that happened, I knew that I really need to get myself together.
Wow, I'm
and
so sorry
really
to hear
get,
that. That's
you
a
know,
lot.
get back to who Juvanie was.
Yeah.
And not let these things drive me, but knowing that I can in fact be in control of these things around me. And that's when I realized that was my aha moment of mental health. And that's when I started, you know, knowing that that relationship with mental health is important and needs to be something that's consistent and something I vowed to myself to continue working on.
Well, good on you for like taking a proactive approach in that instance, in that moment, and like being like, okay, I really need to focus on mental health, because I think, it's so easy for people to neglect that part of themselves, and it's so important to focus on. I'm just curious, like, how was mental health a thing that was ever discussed in your family? Like, did you ever talk about it with your parents?
I think, not really. you know, have family that, you know, suffers from mental health issues, and it's something that I've seen at a very young age, but also knowing the importance of taking care of yourself, and the steps that they took to ensure that, you know, that family member was okay, and working on that.
Yeah.
So that's something that I saw. It was never really a conversation with me, but I saw the care that was given to my other family members, and making sure that, you know, that support system is there, that village, I like to call it the village. So it wasn't necessarily like a conversation, like let's sit down, let's talk about it, but it's something that I saw. Everyone in my family is just always on the go. We always have things we have to do, but having a family member that suffers from a mental health disorder, and just seeing that firsthand for many years, for a very long time, living with them and seeing that experience. So I know the importance of that, and knowing that mental health, not being around the people who care about you, not being around the people who are the best people for you, how that can spiral and go left. So I've had firsthand experiences with mental health and seeing the impact of that, but knowing the importance of advocating for that. And, you know, I know CUNY recently allocated some specific money to mental health,
which is awesome,
because they have realized this is something that we're going to have to deal with. And, you know, students are coming back in the fall in a couple days. And you want to make sure that they know that if there's someone that they need to talk to, they have someone that they can talk to, and knowing that it's okay not to be okay, and things are not going to be figured out, but ensuring a student feels welcomed, safe, celebrated in the space that they're in can go a very long way. And I think, you know, as long as CUNY makes that their priority and their mission, I think we're going to be okay, because we have great people in this institution. One of the most amazing people that have helped me through these times, I've met them at CUNY.
Wow.
I don't know what I would do without them at CUNY. Administrators who have been, you know, just our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Vice Chancellor Denise Maybank, wonderful, remarkable Black woman. Sometimes when going into meetings, speaking with her, speaking with the issues that students had, her ability to connect, her ability to see on the ground what's happening. She would always come to our USS plenaries. Being that on touch with our students and our issues was so important to me, and knowing and seeing how she has maneuvered to take actionable steps. That was very heartwarming to me. And coming from a pandemic, and to see the shift and the changes that we're seeing just within our community at CUNY, our leadership, our priorities, how we are approaching things. You know, progress is happening.
It also goes to show, though, as well, that, like, it's not only important to have, like, a supportive, like familial, like, community around you, but it really does extend to so many other parts of our life. Like, it's important to have a supportive friend group. It's important to have a supportive, like, educational community, and that's where, like, CUNY factors in. You want to know that CUNY is actively advocating for, like, mental health resources for students, and that they care about that. It's not just a degree factory. It's like, these are people, like, that are dealing with real, like, everyday things.
I agree. And I think that for me, that's when knowing the power of speaking up, and, you know, I would always, you know, speak to community ministers. This is what the students want, you know, mental health, speaking with elected officials. There's power in speaking up, and there's power in the collective voice. There's power in sharing stories. There's power in sharing experiences. And sometimes those things alone change the trajectory of how things move on. And being closely connected with people and understanding things on the ground. And seeing when I love when I see administrators, especially at CUNY, take the time just to come to a club meeting, just talk to the students, because they get to see that real life experience, real life happening right before their eyes, and seeing ways that, you know, we can be better. And I think that's what it's all about.
No, for sure.
Seconds. Sorry.
90 seconds? Oh no. Okay. Well, speaking of all that, I know that you wrote an email to the chancellor demanding that CUNY more actively advocate for the mental health resources for students. I was wondering if you could tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's my job. That's what I have to do. Making sure I email the chancellor and letting him know the demands of the students. But I think we've seen some progress in that, and making sure seeing CUNY allocate some money from their own pockets, and making sure for mental health services, a CUNY crisis hotline, something that I used. that, you know, I think it will sound very cliche, but that saved me.
Yeah.
That helped me a lot. And also seeing the conversations and the dialogues and how they want to make sure we amplify on the next level, and seeing our elected officials, I'm making sure that they're advocating and corresponding with what the students want. The New York State Legislature allocated money for mental health. And this is all about meeting the moment. This is the time to meet the moment. And as long as we continue to meet the moment and doing what we need to do and rising to the occasion, is very important. And that's how we move forward.
Especially in the midst of like this transitional phase. I guess like the final question that I have for you is like, how are you feeling going into this fall semester, and like what advice would you give to other students in regards to how to cope with this unprecedented time going into a hybrid learning model?
I'm feeling hopeful. I'm feeling thankful. I'm feeling grateful because I'm here, I'm alive, I'm still here, and I'm excited to, you know, get back to what CUNY is. And to any student out there who has any worries or just nervous, just know that everybody's nervous. Just know that we're all feeling the same ways, and use your voice. Advocate for what you deem is important. Advocate for what do you feel like you need, and, you know, be there for one another. We are each other's brothers keepers and sisters keepers, and be there for one each other, and making sure that we have a village. I think the greatest village of CUNY is the CUNY students.
Yes.
And making sure that village stays strong and we just help one another. And never forget about your dreams and goals, because this is going to be the start.
Yes.
Next week is how we start off, and we make sure that we start to achieve them. And the goals are still there, the dreams are still there. And know that you're going to achieve them, and know that any setback is a major comeback, because I've come back from all my setbacks, so you can in fact do it too.
Yes, that was like a mic drop moment. That was awesome. And yeah, thank you so much for Juvanie for being on the very first episode of CUNY Uncut. This was so awesome.
It is an honor. It is a pleasure. It is the greatest urban university in the world. I don't say that lightly.
No,
I don't say that because it's on the flyers.
You're right.
It's because I've seen it firsthand. So
no, for
that's
sure.
That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
yeah, this is CUNY Uncut, the very first student-run CUNY podcast where we talk about anything and everything, uncensored, unedited, uncut. Thank you for tuning in. Bye, everybody.
Nice.
Awesome.
Okay. Wow,